Okay, let's talk about a machine. A machine that was built to save lives. It was the state-of-the-art radiation therapy device. But instead, it became one of history's most terrifying case studies of how software failure can have catastrophic, fatal consequences. This is the story of the Therac-25.
And really, the whole thing kicks off with these four simple, chilling words. On June 3, 1985, a patient named Katie Yarbrough felt what she called a tremendous force of heat during her treatment. She knew something was terribly wrong, but the technicians, well, they trusted the machine's display and just insisted an overdose was impossible.
But it was very, very possible. The Therac-25 was delivering these massive, completely unseen overdoses of radiation. You see, its high-power X-ray mode used a beam that was about 100 times stronger than its direct electron therapy mode. And somehow, patients were getting hit with that raw, unfiltered power. So how could this possibly happen?
To really understand the how, we've got to go to Tyler, Texas, and look at a specific incident that finally cracked the case. This is the story of an error code that became infamous, Malfunction 54. So picture this, March 21, 1986. An experienced operator is setting up a treatment for a patient named Ray Cox. She types X for X-ray mode, but quickly realizes her mistake and uses the up arrow key to change it to E for electron mode. This all happened in less than 8 seconds. The screen confirmed electron mode, everything looked good, so she hit beam on. The machine fired, and then a cryptic message appeared. Malfunction 54. What that operator had no way of knowing was that in that split second, the machine had just delivered an estimated dose of, get this, 20,000 rads. And to put that number into perspective for you, the intended therapeutic dose was only 200 rads. This patient received 100 times that amount. It was a fatal dose. So the question was no longer if an overdose was happening, but how is it even physically possible for the machine to do this? Well, the answer lies in the machine's design. The Therac-25 was a brand new machine, and it was built on a very different philosophy than its predecessors. And that philosophy involved removing a really critical layer of safety. It all comes down to a fundamental design change. The older Therac-20 relied on physical hardware interlocks. You can think of them as mechanical locks that would physically prevent the machine from firing a high-intensity beam without the proper shielding. But for the Therac-25, the manufacturer, a company called AECL, removed those physical safeguards and put their complete and total trust in the software.
A hardware interlock is a pretty simple concept. It's a physical stopgap. Your car won't let you shift into reverse on the highway. An elevator door has a physical sensor so it won't close on you. The Therac-25's predecessors had these for its radiation beam. The Therac-25 just didn't. And this table right here, it just shows the fatal decision so clearly. AECL reused software from the older, safer machines, but they put it into a new machine that lacked the physical protections the code had always relied on. This meant any hidden software bugs that were once totally harmless were now potentially lethal.
So now we know why the machine was capable of delivering an overdose. But what specifically in the software was causing it to happen? What was the bug? The bug behind Malfunction 54 was what's called a race condition. When the operator in Texas made that fast correction, 2 parts of the software fell out of sync. The part controlling the screen updated correctly to electron, but the part controlling the powerful magnets and the beam intensity, it just didn't have time to reset. So the screen was telling the operator everything was safe, while the machine's hardware was still armed for a full-power X-ray blast. And you're not going to believe this, but that wasn't the only fatal flaw. Another bug, discovered in accidents in Yakima, Washington, involved a counter variable that would roll over from 255 back to 0. If an operator happened to confirm the settings at the exact millisecond it hit 0, a critical safety check was completely bypassed. There were multiple paths to disaster hidden right there in the code.
But software bugs, they're only part of the story. A technical problem of this magnitude, it can't persist without a systemic failure in the organization that built it. And the culture at the manufacturer, AECL, was just as flawed as its code.
The failures went far beyond just code. The manufacturer, ACL, had this overconfident belief that software couldn't fail like hardware could. They confused a machine that worked reliably with one that was inherently safe, and this led them to repeatedly dismiss early accident reports from hospitals. The user interface itself was a major problem, with these cryptic error messages like malfunction 54 that operators often just ignored, and maybe most astonishingly, the entire software system was written by just one person, with no independent code review. It was a recipe for disaster.
I mean, this quote says it all. After Katie Yarbrough was burned in 1985, the company's official response was denial. They insisted an overdose was impossible. This culture of dismissal meant that for nearly 2 years, as more people were injured and killed, the problem was never properly investigated.
Eventually, after the repeated identical accidents in Texas, the truth could no longer be denied. The fallout from the Therac-25 disaster would permanently change how we think about software in safety-critical systems.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, stepped in and mandated a corrective action plan. And what did they demand? The return of physical safety measures. They forced AECL to put the hardware interlocks back in, to add sensors that could physically verify the machine's state, and to fix the cryptic error messages. They essentially forced a return to a defense-in-depth philosophy.
And you can see here how directly the failures map to modern best practices. The story of the Therac-25 literally became the blueprint for what not to do. Every mistake, relying only on software, using cryptic error codes, denying reports, led directly to a new rule, a new standard, or a new law designed to prevent it from ever happening again.
Ultimately, this tragedy had a lasting legacy. It's now a required case study in software engineering and medical physics programs all around the world. It also directly led to new legislation, like the Safe Medical Device Act, which mandates accountability. The lessons learned from the Therac-25 are now literally written into law.
And that leaves us with a critical question for today. We live in a world far more complex and software-driven than the 1980s. Our cars, our power grids, our financial systems, they all rely on billions of lines of code. The story of the Therac-25 is a stark reminder that when the stakes are high, true safety requires more than just trusting the code to be perfect. It requires layers, redundancy, and physical, verifiable fail-safes.